Before we get into today's episode, don't forget to sign up to the book and the VIP newsletter at thehighestandbestuse.com. For the book, you can get that at Amazon, Chapters, Barnes & Noble, all of these places in paperback, ebook, hardcover, and of course now the Audible version as well. So grab the book, sign up to the VIP newsletter, thehighestandbestuse.com, and now to today's episode.
I'm Darren Cabral, and the highest and best use of my business is leveraging our marketing expertise to find value-add off-market properties to build wealth in commercial real estate.
Thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast, where we talk techniques to optimize your land, structure, skill sets, and time, as well as the highest and best use principles to make your business more profitable, productive, and efficient. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Oh my goodness, my guest today, Darren Cabral. I'm so excited about this. Darren's a longtime friend of mine. He is a stunningly good entrepreneur. I'm really excited to talk to him about his active businesses today. He is the current owner of a marketing agency called Suit Social, and he also happens to be a cigar connoisseur. So, my man, thanks for being here.
I love it, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me.
This is fun. I'm glad we could do this in person.
Yeah, me too.
We've been talking over like the last year, like, oh, we should get together. Oh, we should go for drinks. And it just never happened.
Been a lot of back and forth, but it's what happens when two people are busy. It's hard to actually bring it together, right?
It's
so
true.
I'm glad we did it.
So before we bring you in, do a little intro, we're going to talk about today's show. So number one, selling an active business. I would love to hear all about Suit Social and how that's running down. And number two, transitioning to real estate. What does that look like and why are you doing it?
100%. So I can just dive right in.
Yeah, just please tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Darren Cabral, and obviously I'm, like you mentioned, an entrepreneur, mainly known as the CEO of Suit Social, which is a digital marketing company. We focus on helping a lot of small businesses all the way up to national brands, really manage paid social campaigns, basically generate customers, generate leads, that kind of thing. And that's what I've done for the better part of almost a decade. But as you mentioned,
it's been 10 years.
It's been almost 10 years. Yeah. So formally incorporated that like 7 years ago, but there was a run up a couple of years before that doing it on my own. It's been almost that long, and then kind of made the intro into real estate. Midway through that, got introduced to it, and that's kind of how we met and those similar interests. And now finally at a point where I can go full time because there's some exciting things happening.
Oh, damn. So tell us about how you started the agency.
Yeah, 100%. So it started kind of it's going to sound really weird, but it started almost by accident.
They always start by accident.
It always, I think that's the best thing. Sometimes when you try to do something, it's what makes it the most difficult. Yeah. But basically, I had a very small business. So coming out of college, essentially, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was actually, I don't know if I told you this, I was a plumbing apprentice.
Were you really?
For about 3 years.
Dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's what I did starting in grade 12 of high school. And I went through it for about 3 years. I put in a ton of hours. I tried the service side. We did new construction, ICI, all that stuff. I liked it, but I started to just not find a way that I could map a path that made sense in my head. I couldn't find that direction in it that would get me to where I wanted to be. Yeah. So at some point, I guess nature kind of ran its course. I had an injury, I had a fall, and it put me out for a few months. And in that few months, I had some time to think, do I want to go back to this or do I want to find something else? Yeah. And I got the first part down, which was, no, I don't want to go back to this. But the second part of what else I want to do, I had no idea. Right. So my parents, being smart parents at the time, I was like barely college age. They said, listen, you can't do nothing. So go back to school while you're thinking about it. And I was like, sure. So I went to school for business. And in that process, I started a small little side hustle, which was called Toronto Skycam back then, which was aerial photography, surveys, roof photography, media stuff. We did stuff with Rogers. It was a fun little project, but found no way to really scale it. Ended up taking on a partner that kind of brought us into a much bigger operation. They were working with Amazon at the time, doing drone deliveries and that stuff. And I worked with them for about a month, and I realized, no, I can't do this. Too big of a show, too many people. They put me in an office, and I left. And so I had to sit down one day and say, what the hell am I going to do next? Like, okay, I'm out of the trades. I'm out of school. My business thing is done now. What am I going to do? And I literally drew up 3 options. But because of the way my brain works, I made 3 websites so I could see what 3 businesses would look like.
Just the shotgun approach.
just a shotgun approach. And I literally looked at all these and like, which one would make the most sense? And Suit Social was one of those options. And so it was very simple. I know exactly where I was when I thought of it. I was driving home in Vaughan, and I was thinking about it. I said, you know what? All those stodgy suits, I was thinking in my head, like those guys in those offices don't know nothing about social, nothing about creative. They're going to need help. This is booming. This is coming up. I'm going to be the person to help them. And so I basically went forward with that idea, and that's how we got to where we are today. One thing led to another.
How did you ID that as an opportunity?
Social at the time was getting really popular. So a lot of people were talking about it, but a lot of the big agencies and big companies, it wasn't something they were even touching yet. It was like almost a novelty, kind of like we saw when TikTok came out.
So this would have been like 2013-ish?
Yeah, even before, like 2012, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty early on in the game, and it was a novelty. Like most companies didn't have a social media strategy in 2012. Right. It was like they knew it existed, but it wasn't a thing. Yeah. And so there was this like I could be the expert where no one had an expert in social. So I could come in and say, hey, I know how to do this. I did a lot of it through those small side projects, Toronto Sky Chem and my side businesses. I got to play with that because I couldn't afford any other marketing. All I could do was social. So
do you think Gary Vee really pushed this whole social media movement?
If he didn't push it, he definitely accelerated it. I think it's happening no matter what.
Yeah.
He championed a lot of it for sure. And I think he brought it into like the mainstream business space. He got it to the forefront of people's minds. If this is something, okay, he's a legit business owner and he's talking about it, maybe we got to do more of it.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Continue. I cut you off.
I don't remember where I was.
Identifying the opportunity.
Oh yeah. So no, I pretty much figured out that that's where things were heading and that I could stand out in that space pretty easily and become an expert pretty easily because the bar was nothing. I mean, the bar was no one knew how to do it yet and everyone was trying to figure it out. So positioned myself there. I started doing very small stuff. Like it started with just like, hey, I'll do a few posts on your Instagram a few times a week. And it snowballed from there until more and more companies would come to us and we started to land like, I started to land really big names. Like we landed the second largest automotive group in the US as a client when it was just me in a basement and I don't even know what I was doing yet. And we signed like a huge consulting agreement. I don't even know what consulting was, but they needed help with social. I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out together. But that showed you how empty the landscape was. There wasn't really anyone else they could go to. And so that was kind of my competitive edge at the time. And we positioned ourselves as a social first agency. That was all we did. We're not going to do your SEO. We're not going to do your websites at the time. We're just going to do social. And that stood out to people and it got us into some big names. And we just played those big names to find more big names and went from there.
Two things, competitive edge and being first to market.
Yeah.
How do you think that really increased your business potential?
Oh, it's huge. Like first to market is a big thing or close to first at least, especially if it's in a particular like niche.
Because the first people take all the bullets, right?
They do. You never want to be like the first guy, but you want to be somewhere after that first or second company's tried it out and the market. That's the other thing. You got to make sure the market has demand. Like, is there people that actually need this? And there was. So we were at a point where a lot of companies were thinking, hey, we got to figure out this social thing. Yeah. And they're looking left, right, and center. They're talking to their existing agencies. And their agencies saying, no, we just do Google. We just do SEO. Like, well, who the hell is going to help us with social? So there was a good demand, which helped. And then, being one of the first few helped a lot too, because we were able to rank up like different awards and things of like, top social agency in Canada. We had that a few times in a row. And that helped us just stand out really quickly because we weren't competing with 3,000 companies. Yeah. And then thanks to Ty Lopez, everyone created a agency and it got really saturated real quick.
How do you think that affected the market? Because I mean, saturation, supply and demand, we're seeing it in real estate.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for every market, every business fundamental. What do you think saturation means to social media and how has that affected your trajectory?
That's a great question. It's a big problem and you feel it almost like the brakes are put on. And you have to change your strategy because no longer can you just have the novelty of we do this cool thing because like everyone does this cool thing, right? And it actually hurt in more ways than one. And the biggest way it hurt, and we can kind of see this even in real estate if you're dealing with contractors and you see how a lot of people have bad experiences, so they don't trust contractors anymore.
Come on.
Well, let me tell you, the same thing is true in the social media game. Yeah. Because of these Ty Lopez internet entrepreneurs took a course, I can do your marketing kind of people. By the time we now would meet a company for the first time looking for help, they give us their 3 or 4 bad experiences. And you're like, So now it's an uphill battle. Like the saturation wasn't just making competitive. It was actually like kind of tarnishing the whole service as a whole.
Oh, wow.
So that was getting real because like, I've tried this before. It never works. It's like, well, who'd you try it with? Like the 18-year-old that just finished a Ty Lopez course, for sure. They weren't respecting it as like an actual business service, something they should invest in the same way they were looking at other elements. They were looking at it as this novelty that kids are going to scam them of money to do, and they don't trust anyone to do it. And that started to happen a lot. And so we had to shift up our strategy to overcome that and position beyond that. Some of that was price. Some of that was finding proprietary ways to do things that no one else was doing things and marketing that. But it was a challenge for sure. Yeah.
What's the ROI of marketing?
Ooh, isn't that the best question ever? Depends who you ask. Depends who you ask, because if you ask Gary Vee, he'll say, what was the ROI in the first basketball that someone bought Michael Jordan?
That's right.
Right? And it's tricky because that's a great question because a lot of marketing people try to avoid it. I've tried to solve for it and actually find a way to bring that in a more measurable way. And that's actually how we found our focus and stood out. So it's a great question, because what we shifted to was, we're not just going to post content on your social media and create stuff for you and put stuff out there and get likes and followers. What we're going to do is focus on paid advertising, and we're going to focus on the lead generation side of it and the conversion side of it. So I'm only going to do the things that I can attribute ROI to. So thanks to those platforms, they have those tools. Like, we can run an ad campaign and say, you spent this much money and got this many leads, you closed this many sales. We can do that. And so I chose to focus on that because I was tired of answering that question vaguely and just saying, well, what's the value of a brand over time? Because small businesses don't care. They cared about the leads coming in. They cared about the sales. And so we focused on that. And so that's how we answered that question.
Yeah. Like small businesses, they're limited on their finances, typically speaking. Yeah. We're not talking about General Motors or Ford or, the biggest cigarette company in the world. We're not talking about where money almost doesn't matter because they'll find a way to monetize.
Yes.
Right. Small businesses, like, I have a very finite amount of resources. These have to hit.
Everything has to be measurable. And of course, I mean, there's huge companies like Apple is famous for going to their agencies and saying, we got to spend $50 million on a YouTube campaign. And they go, what's the metric? We don't care. Just get it out there and spend the $50 million. Yeah. And they just blow it. And we've had big clients like that too. And we have a couple now that I love. Yeah. And they're far less worried about conversion. And they can come to us and say, hey, we have $2 million for the year to spend. And we just need as much exposure as possible. We need traffic flowing through. We need people engaging with the brand. We need to see movement. And that's their metric. They're not really caring about end goal sales.
Is that because they can monetize because their brand is so big? Coca-Cola is like, wherever we put our marketing out, somebody will find it.
Exactly. They have the distribution to meet it. Like the company I'm talking about, without giving it away, is a large pet food brand, basically. And they're in almost every single pet food store. And the chances are, if you get familiar with the brand, the next time you go to the store, you will see it and you will recognize it. So for them, it's easy to convert, but also they just have bigger budgets. So to them, it's like a couple $1 million is like, the average small business deciding to spend 20 grand. Yeah. It's the same equivalent, because they'll raise 200-300, especially some of the newer companies. Like, these guys raised a venture round a couple years ago for like $300 million, and they'd have to spend it. Like, that money's for growth. Yeah. And so they're trying to just pump that wherever they can and get exposure and get the name out. And so there's a few things at play for sure.
So you've transitioned into selling this business.
Yes.
Where do we start here? Tell us about this.
Oh man, this is a rabbit hole. So I ran it for a while, obviously, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, more importantly. Like, how
many employees?
We're at 5 full-time now, and then contractor, subcontractor, other stuff, but full-time staff is 5. Yep. And I learned a lot. I took my lumps kind of doing it. We were at our biggest 2 years ago. We were like almost 8 full-time staff, so we downsized clearly. Yep. Intentionally. That was part of one of the mistakes we made, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot doing it. I learned what I like. I learned what I don't like. I found a lot of my weaknesses. And I never intended it to be a forever business. I kind of always intended it as like, this is where I want to learn. This is my education.
Gotcha.
So I want to build my contacts, my network, get my skills in place, learn how to manage the most important thing in the world, which is people. How do you actually have a full-time staff that can stay motivated, that can execute, that can operate without you? Those things were very difficult to figure out. And I made a lot of mistakes over the years, but I finally got to a point last year where I figured it out. I mean, I got to a point where I love our team. I love the way they operate. They can almost do everything without me at all anymore. And it's interesting to see. So that kind of evolved. And I started to sit back and go, like, at some point I want to do something else. And we'll be real for a second, as fluffy as I want to make this. One of the motivators is money, because when I started getting in the real estate game, I've always been a little bit into it. So, my dad's involved in real estate as well. He actually started in real estate the same time I started Suits. We started the same year. But he's in the real estate game. And so through that, I got some exposure. And we started to do some things. We started to get into flipping, and I'd put a certain amount of efforts into something, and we'd do a house or two, and you'd see the amount you net at the end of that, and you're like, that wasn't all that much work. And you look at this company, and you're like, I'm managing all these people, all these clients, all this work, and you have kind of a decent top line, but by the time you work out all your numbers, there's not that much left at the bottom of a service company. When you look at your bottom line, so I started to think, this, again, it's just like the plumbing situation I told you. I start to look at it and go, this vehicle's not going to get me where I want to go.
Opportunity vehicle.
Right. Yeah. So it's not going to get me all the way there now. So I kind of have to hop off at some point. And so I started thinking about it, and I talked to my wife about it, because she's usually a great source of guidance. And she said, well, why don't you look into selling it, or look into getting some sort of merger deal going, or something that you can let go of the wheel a little bit, but still allow fulfillment for your team, for the thing that you built. Like, there's continuity. Don't just kill it, but can you now move this thing forward without you and eventually step away? Because that was important to me too. I didn't want to just kill it, fire everybody, and leave. That was never something I would want to do. But it was time for me to move on. And I knew that if I just kept it as a side hustle and started focusing on real estate, which I started to fall in love with, and the profit was there and the money was there, If I just kept the agency as a side hustle, clients would suffer ultimately, because what would happen is our team wouldn't stay motivated. They'd see me half-assing it, so to speak. They'd see me not caring anymore. I wouldn't be focused on expansion and growth. I would just be like status quo. And what employee wants that? They want to see growth. They want to see the next level. And so the only way I could give them that was maybe we partner up with a much larger firm. You guys become part of a bigger team. There's more opportunity for everyone. There's an exit for me. Our clients get better service and more access. And so it was a win-win-win. And so I basically contacted someone I know who happens to be an investor in a large agency. And I was like, listen, if you're interested, I might be ready to kind of pull the trigger on something, an acquisition, a merger, whatever it is. Let's talk about it. We talked about it. We sat down for a few breakfasts and brunches, and literally it was napkin numbers. I know you talk about napkin numbers.
I love the napkin numbers, yeah.
That's literally what it was. Over brunch was literally on the back of a napkin. He slid it over and he's like, this is what I can do on the deal and the terms. And I was like, sure, let's do it. So then it was a couple months of lawyering back and forth, and we're still finalizing at the time of recording this purchase agreements with a target close date of February 1st. Hey. So this is like right around the corner, basically. Yeah, awesome, that's where we are.
Would you say this is an identity for you? Was this hard to get to this decision?
Oddly enough, I had more of an identity attachment to that first little side hustle, Toronto Skycam. That was harder for me to step out of than this, because I'm always a marketer still. No matter what happens with the agency, I am now a marketer. Like, I understand how to manage millions and millions of dollars creatively and do different things with them, and how to distribute and how to get attention, I can now do that. So the identity is not lost. Only the company is. But not really, because I'm still going to be around for a while. I'll still be semi-involved in a consulting capacity. Yep. They're going to maintain the brand, as far as I know, for quite a while. So Suits will always exist. And I get to kind of see it flourish beyond me.
Isn't that
so it's kind of cool.
That's fun, right?
Yeah.
You get to see your baby grow.
It's like a legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone's willing to put more money into it, and they're way better capitalized as well. Like the guy who bought it, super big guy. He owns a bunch of companies in the area that we're in. The funds are almost limitless. So he's happy to and we even talked during the acquisition. We're like, he asked me, he's like, hey, this economy coming up, it's pretty crazy. How do you feel about it? I'm like, I don't know. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough to weather. He's like, yeah, I agree. And his plan is basically, I'll float losses as long as I need to. So when things recover, we're the only agency in town. He's not just acquiring us. He's been acquiring everybody. So this guy's scooping up like every competitor in town. And he's like, I'll throw money at this for 3, 4, 5 years if I have to. But at the end of that, we're the last players. He's really smart, but I can't afford to float it for 5 years. And I don't want to, because I'm doing other things. So if he's willing to do that, it was a no-brainer. And yeah, that's where we got.
So with you being extracted from the business, like he's buying it based on EBITDA or based on a multiple?
It's a factor. So it's a bit of I would call it a strategic acquisition more than anything. So EBITDA comes into effect for sure in terms of the monetary value and the initial payout. There's a few layers of how I'm getting basically brought in. But the main thing for them was the current agency he runs, they only specialize in SEO and websites. They have tried to build a social department and failed over and over again.
So this is a bolt-on for them.
It's a bolt-on because they haven't managed to do that on their own yet. They've tried to do it. They can't seem to figure out how the teams layer, how to sell it, how to package it, how to execute it. And we have this like seasoned team that can do all of that on their own. And so for them, it's like, do we just keep trying to screw around building this for the next 3 years, or do we just bolt this on?
Whoa. Before we get back to the episode, don't forget to sign up to the VIP newsletter at thehighestandbestuse.com. You get great tips and tricks there, completely free. Also, don't forget to grab a copy of the book at thehighestandbestuse.com, Amazon Chapters, Barnes & Noble, all of these places. That's where you can get it. You can get it in paperback, ebook, hardcover edition, as well as the Audible version too. So if you like to consume content by audio version, grab that. If you like paper, grab it there too. And now back to the episode.
Let it grow.
That's the thing. So like, okay, so knowing what you know now, like if you were to look back and say, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years. This is how long it's taken to build. With the skill sets that you have, with the mindset that you have, with the perspectives that you have on the industry, would you say it's worthwhile to start your own social media company again? Or would you, personally if you were to get back into this space, would you acquire something knowing that you can take 10 years of somebody else's time for one payment and get rolling from there?
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest shift in my mindset now for sure has been leverage and leadership being a focus. So no longer would I build something like that from scratch, for sure not. But I had to at the time because of the position I was in. I didn't know enough about business. And so this was the real life trial and error decade of struggle that needed to happen. But now I've been through it. So if I was to come back, I know what to look for. I know what the team needs to be assembled. I know how the teams have to be managed, how they have to be motivated. I know what alignment looks like. I know what leadership looks like. So I would find a company that meets that or has a capacity to meet that and skip ahead that 10 years if I was going to do it again. For sure. I think acquisition is the way And it's the way you see big seasoned businesses do the same thing. They grow through acquisition. It's how almost every large company grows. And that's because once you find the secret sauce and once you have the elements and the skills, you can move very quickly. But if you don't have them, acquisition is a disaster. If you try to put money into a company and you have no experience, this is why sometimes, franchises are good because they give you an operating system, but you do see a lot of franchisees in the kind of lower class franchises, not the McDonald's, of course, because the way they vet, but a lot of small franchises just die off, are never profitable. This is because you're taking an employee mindset person who's never had these experiences and you're giving them a business to run. That's very hard. They're putting all this money up front. They're trying to make it back. They're panicking. They're freaking out. It doesn't work because you don't have that skill set yet. But once you have it, acquisition makes a whole lot of sense when you know how to run stuff, and more importantly, find the right people to run stuff for you is the biggest thing for sure.
What do you think is more important, cash flow or enterprise value?
Ooh, that's a good one. It depends what you're doing. It really does depend on your objectives and your goals. If you're late, that's a really good question. If you're looking just for a return on capital, I think cash flow is the smartest way to go. It's the safest way to go. If that's your goal, if you're looking for safe growth, safe income, stability, look for a business that cash flows steadily. If you're some sort of high growth venture firm or private equity company, or you're early stage in life, you have some experience, but you want to take risk with higher reward, enterprise value. Because you want a vehicle that has that built in, something that you can come in. It's just like value. That's like flipping a house. Yeah. Something that all the pieces are there and you know the right things to add and you're going to massively increase that value. But if you don't know that, it's just a big risk that's going to blow up and it's not paying you and you don't want that happening. So it depends where you're at, but both can be great.
Were you able to sell the corporation that you have this registered in?
Yeah, it's a share purchase.
Did you get lifetime capital gains?
I am, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's a share purchase, and that does qualify for that, which is a really nice benefit because it feels like you're getting like twice as much. Because if you didn't have that, you'd lose half of it. Thanks, Canada.
Thanks, Canada.
So it is, many regrets. But anyway, it's a share purchase for sure, which is the best possible form of either merger or acquisition you can ask for as an entrepreneur. The main reason is, opposed to an asset purchase, share purchases kind of relieve you of almost all the liability. So the acquiring company assumes all liability, past, present, and future. You don't. Which
can be a risk as a buyer.
Exactly.
If you've got like back tax owing or some crazy shit that you did.
Yes.
Right? Pending legal advice.
Yeah.
Obviously, it can be a problem.
It is the most risky form of purchase for a buyer. It is the most optimal for the seller.
Sure.
If you want out of that business, because you're clean, clear, and done. Yeah. So the acquiring companies have to really know what they're doing and really have to do their due diligence, because a lot of that's going to sit on them. If some issue from 5 years ago comes back up, that's their issue to deal with.
Yeah. And you're still part of the business, right? As you transition?
I will still be, for the foreseeable future. I'll still be part of it actively for probably like 3 to 6 months. And then more from a consulting and guidance standpoint for the foreseeable years after that.
Yeah. I think that, I think that has merit, especially as a buyer. Like if I were to acquire your company and you were going to stick around as the person who started it, bootstrapping, knows the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts. If you're going to stick around, that probably says something about your character.
Yeah, 100%. And they tie some of the, on top of the initial fees for the actual purchasing the company, they also tie in earnouts as well. And they're based on the performance. They're based on the fact that things will go well and that the company continues to grow and be profitable. And so, of course, that's to get me to buy in. They want me to stick around and actually be a part. That limits a lot of their risk for sure. But in this case, it is a pretty seamless machine. And so the heavy lifting for me is the first 3 months, because obviously no one's going to know how to integrate something. They don't know how it works. So how can they integrate it? So once it's integrated though, and once they have a new kind of head of that department and someone is running it, I can sit back and I'll basically be there when there's fires, when they like, hey, how do we hire? How do we scale? How do we build this pod out? I'll be there to answer some of those questions, but it'll be on a very kind of consulting basis, really.
So then transitioning out of Suit Social and into your new venture, you're getting into real estate.
I'm getting into real estate. So I've been dipping my toes in for years, like I said. And I'm going to be honest. I'll throw my cards on the table right now just so we can have transparency.
Okay.
We'll throw them all out there.
Let's dive into the deep end. Yeah.
So my ultimate ambition for years now, it's been eating at me, is basically to build a real estate investment business in the commercial real estate space, not commercial residential, but commercial, industrial, retail, office, for a lot of reasons, which will take too long to explain. But I've had an ambition of how do I build a large investment company that raises capital and acquires commercial assets with a specific strategy in mind. That's always been the goal. As you know, that's very complicated. It takes a lot of steps. It requires you knowing a lot of people. It requires you understanding a lot of things, and building a lot of trust and a lot of relationship and a lot of things I don't have in this market yet. And so with that goal in mind, I had to step back and say, what's the path there? So what are the things I got to do, accomplish, get to that point so I can ultimately do that thing I want to do? And first I had to figure out what that really would look like, the end goal. And luckily I have friends that are in private equity. I have a good friend who built a private equity firm and raises tens and tens of millions of dollars every year. His whole background is in funds, and he's able to shed light on, this is what you're going to need to get there. Give me a very clear path. And then now I'm reverse engineering and just starting from the beginning. And so one of the things I decided to do was, hey, agency is going to be out of my hands. I have this big lofty goal. It's going to take a while to get there. What do I do in the meantime? And so I ended up getting licensed in real estate sales. So I am now a licensed real estate sales representative, which is cool because we have the family flipping business, which means we have a good volume of properties every year that we're moving. We've had different agents. It's been up and down. We decided it would make the most sense to bring it all in-house. And so we have my brother in it. So he's our contractor. My dad works day to day on the financing stuff. My marketing side is what brings in all our deals. And we'll talk about that. But we have a huge marketing engine that brings in off-market deals to the tune of 1,000 plus a year coming through. And now we'll have the sales side in-house as well. So we're kind of completing the circle. And for me, this is active cash flow, getting my hands in the market more full-time, meeting more people, getting behind some of these deals, even if they're smaller, and starting to also put away more and more cash. So I have the acquisition of the business, I have commissions flowing through, I have private interest money flowing through, and I'm starting to build a little bit of a stockpile because there's a good chance before I get to raising capital, I got to get in some of those commercial deals on my own.
True.
I got to show people that I can actually do this and have a track record and have skin in that game before I say, hey, give me your money. This is what we're doing. And that's going to take a few years. And so I'm building a cash pile. I'm looking for opportunities actively. By the end of this year, I'll be selling commercial properties. So I want to understand them more in depth. What are the risks? What do buyers look for? How does that deal process flow? So that I can pair that with my marketing expertise, with the investment expertise, with the real estate sales expertise and the technicality. And eventually, when I do get to that point of building that commercial fund, I have a well-rounded skill set. Not necessarily just so I can execute it, but so now I can find leaders in those areas. And I know what to look for. And I knew what leaders I need to build and promote and what organization needs to be built out. And this is thinking 10 years out. But that's where we're at. And so now I'm on that transitional phase, basically, on to the next stage.
Does it feel like you've kind of gone back to step one on that 10-year plan? Just like you were in Sioux Social, you're back to like, okay, here we go again. We're building.
It does. Yeah. It feels like you're back to start. But so if you remember back in the day, like playing video games, it feels like I'm back to the beginning of the level, but now I have one. Yes, I'm back to level 1, but now I have all the cheat codes.
Yeah.
And so I'll do in 10 years what would have taken me 100 the first time. So it's like it's so different. Like how quickly you're able to just set up new corporations and new structures and accounting and legal. It's all instant now. So like this has all been built out in a month or two. What used to take me, Suits took a year to get the website up. Like now that's a week.
Isn't that perspective? If you look back over your last 10, you're like, hey, I got paid, I transitioned, I had cash flow in the meantime, and I learned.
Yep.
Now the next 10, look out.
Yeah. 100%. So I'm excited for it. The goal is I'm an investor first and foremost. And that's the goal we're going to move. And I'm going to use all my skills to move towards that. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring all that marketing skill into the world of sales, starting with our properties only, but slowly opening up to other people as I see good fits and good people that I want to work with, bring that marketing expertise, build more relationships, build more hands-on in that market, and move in that direction. And so that's kind of going to be cool because not many agents have that level of marketing expertise or understanding. And so I'm going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to see how it pans out on both ends, on lead acquisition, how we get deals the before, and then also how we sell our deals and get the most possible money for them and doing things that people are not doing. So I'm excited to roll it all in. I think it's going to move a lot faster than I think. But I feel way more confident doing this than I did starting Suits. Like it's a whole different feeling.
So what would you say highest and best use of your time is?
Right now, this year, or the next 10 years?
Both.
Right now, it's just getting into marketing the sales side. It's getting in and building a really good track record, a really good name, and putting into practice a lot of the things that I know work into our business and seeing how those happen. But this year is building that network, taking more time to actually meet the players that I know are in this game, build those relationships, gain that respect, and get into a deal. So I need to get in with people. I need to get into a deal this year that aligns with that. That's the biggest thing, and everything else is just stepping stones into that.
What do you think your first one will be? Like self-storage, industrial warehouse? What do you think?
You know what? I've simmered on this for years. And it's years. It's been in my mind because I knew I wanted to do it. I have my reasons why I like commercial, but...
Why is that? Not to sidestep the question, but I'm curious.
It's So this is 100% preference and opinion, because I have people much smarter than me that are also in private equity that have funds on the residential side. So I'm not downing residential at all. I just don't understand it, and there's a risk that I don't enjoy, and that's residential in Canada scares me because of the direction of our government. We have a very liberalized government. I think every landlord can give you certain horror stories, and I fear how much further that pendulum will swing to the point where it gets very difficult. When you talk about like rent controls, when you talk about eviction processes, it gets very hard to run a business especially when you're starting out. If you have like super high levels of scale already, it's a little different. But when you're starting out in residential, it's very hard when you're kind of like clamped down and the government gets a say in everything that you're doing. You know, you have a tenant stop paying. We have a triplex now where from my dad's business where tenants stopped paying like 8 months ago. They're still in that process of getting out, right? And it's you have to it's crazy. And we went through stuff where we've bought houses and the owner on closing day was still in the house and wouldn't leave. And it took 6 months to get them out of the house that they already sold, that we've already paid for. Like literally to get a sheriff out there and actually get them evicted, which was an interesting process to watch. My brother put up with a lot of it. But it was an interesting process to watch. And it's like, we owned the damn house and you couldn't get the person out of it. That's just scary for me at scale, because now it's manageable, but I don't know where it's going. And the worst thing for me would be like build this whole future vision, acquire all this residential portfolio at that scale, and then have them come out and say, I can't move rents for 5 years, or I can't get anybody out, or there's all kinds of weird stuff I heard them talk about that just scares the crap out of me. Yeah. I've heard the arguments against that say that's unfounded. It's not going to happen. Here's the reasons why. And I'm fine with that. And they're probably right, but I won't sleep at night going in that direction. Whereas commercial has a lot of interesting attributes to it. It has a really nice simplicity that I love. It has long-term leases that make a lot of sense to me. It has the ability of, hey, they stop paying their rent. Very easy to get people out in certain circumstances. There's always exceptions, but it's like you're talking industrial, you're talking certain retail. And that's because, unfortunately, our government doesn't really care about business as much as they should right now. Their priority is not protecting small business tenants. They're not even thinking about that. No. And so as a landlord, it makes it an easier operating environment. Like, does anyone care what you're charging a commercial tenant? No. The government's not involved in it. Not that I think we shouldn't care, because we should. It's just that the government shouldn't be the one caring. Like, their job is to administer, not manage. They shouldn't be coming in and telling you what you can charge, what you can move, what you can change. There's too much of that in res. And so commercial is attractive to me. Yeah. And also, I come from a business background in a business world. And so dealing with business owners and understanding operations and operational needs, it works better with my brain. And it's a bit of a competitive advantage I might have over someone who's never had that. And so it only makes sense to go in that direction.
Well, you know what? Small business, it's a function of economics. So like if people can pay, no matter what you're charging, and it makes sense for their business to rent that space, they're going to do it. And that's it. Right? Exactly. With a residential tenancy, it's a little bit more emotional. Truth, it's somebody's home. It's where they reside. They feel cozy there.
Very emotional. It's
different, right?
Yeah.
Back to your first deal. What are you hoping to do?
Ooh, I don't know. And so the reason I say that is I don't know what I don't know. I'm an opportunity investor. And so I think the first deal is going to be, like, I have a future thesis of what I'd like to do. It kind of revolves around industrial. But in the beginning, I'm going to do the deal that makes the most sense. And so we do a lot of off-market advertising. I've already started in the commercial space. So we're starting to generate off-market commercial leads.
That's good.
Fun exercise. If you search sell my commercial property on Google, there's a good chance I'll be somewhere on that first page already with a little lead magnet site we've put up.
Because everybody's so focused on residential.
Yeah. There's so little.
This little thing over here is not touched.
Well, it's the thing I'm seeing again. So it's not to give away the secret sauces here, but just like I saw in the social industry, the commercial industry is run by giants, which is both a sort of a resistance point. It's difficult. It's going to be a barrier to entry because there's a lot of gatekeepers, a lot of big players, but also those big players are kind of slow and traditional. And so they're not doing stuff like, can we put up a lead magnet site that ranks the top of Google? So everyone that searches sell my property is going to come through that. So like I'm ranking above, like you'll make that search and you'll see me above like CBRE and stuff because they're not optimizing. They're not even thinking of that. And so this is kind of going to be an advantage, I think, of like guerrilla marketing tactics and this advanced social media marketing system, strategies, tools that I'm bringing from the e-commerce world, right? From the online world into this very old, slow moving giant of an industry, which is commercial real estate, and seeing how that can start to affect. And so the first deal I do will be something that has a lot of value. It's going to be something that comes in off market that I can see clear potential, clear value add. That's going to be the first deal. It could be office, it could be industrial, but it's going to be something that has value, because it's too hard to just say I'll only do this. Eventually, through doing a few of those, I'll prove a thesis out. And once I have a real strategy, that's when I'd start raising capital. But in the interim, it's what deal's going to make sense.
Does the criteria still map out the same as if you're going to buy residential, like you want to buy at 50 or 60 or 70 cents on the dollar? Does that same thing play out in the commercial space?
Sort of. Price gets a little, I mean, I'm no expert yet. This is something I'm moving towards, so I won't pretend to be.
Yeah.
But from my understanding in the commercial space, I mean, there's some key differences. So one is it's in a house, it's easy to look at a house and say, what are comparable values to understand where your value is.
Like
Like
my neighbor sell for,
right.
what my other neighbor sell for.
Right.
It's probably what I'm worth to.
So it's very easy to then look at that and say, okay, what can I get this house for that's going to be under those comparables and get that margin I'm looking for, 70%, 50%, whatever it is. In commercial, it's a little different because it's very hard to get comparables, especially if you're looking at like large scale industrial or especially like retail, office, because they're income based. Yeah, it's how much money can that make? It's cap rate. So how much money can that building generate? And so what you're looking for is not necessarily a certain percentage, but I want to look for a building that, and not just, it's not as simple to say vacancies either. Because some people say, well, I'll buy an office building that, it's 30% vacant and I'll just fill them. That's not always the way to get highest. Voila. That's not always the best way to get highest and best use. Sometimes highest and best use is found in what's something about this industrial property that no one's seen yet, that I can do totally different, that would attract a totally different kind of tenant in a totally different kind of way and increase the cash flow far beyond, like an exponential way, not a 30% increase, but I'm doubling what this was used for before.
Look what WeWork did.
Yeah.
Right. They took those spaces that were previously offices.
Yep.
They bought by the acre and sold by the foot.
Exactly.
That was their model.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's finding that, I think, is where the value is going to be. So whatever properties come in, it's when I look at it, can I see a better use? Can I see something that no one sees yet? And that's an advantage in commercial too, because a lot of these big guys, again, there's a lack of creativity. They're kind of doing what they know. They're doing what's already worked. They're not thinking of how do we change the status quo and do something totally weird. And that's where I think the opportunity is going to lie for the small guy.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited for you.
Me too.
I'm really excited for you. You've got this passion for it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been simmering
yeah.
for a long time, man.
So what's next? Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here?
Where do you go from here?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. To me, it's just right now, like I said, it's building network and working towards that goal. I haven't thought beyond that. Besides the yacht, that's no.
Besides the yacht, how do we execute on the yacht?
Reverse engineer yacht.
That's right.
No, I to me, it's just meet great people, like yourself, and continue to network, give value where I can, get my kind of face my name out there, get my information out there, and just align with the best people that I can. I just want to be with cool people doing cool things. That's the priority right now. Yeah. Sell some real estate, build a cash stack, find a good deal, and then we'll go from there. But that's pretty much where I'm at, man. Yeah.
Do you think there's something in the market that's missing, that's clearly obvious right now, that you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to hit this thing when I get into commercial, and this is the nugget. This is the key.
Maybe, but A, I don't want to sound stupid, and B, I don't want to give it away.
You don't want to give it away, yeah.
But maybe, and it's a lot of that is theoretical, and I think and that comes from the experience of business. I'm experienced to know enough that you have to test something out before you have that conviction. Like a lot of things feel good when you think about them, they sound good, they look good on paper, and when you execute, you find problems you don't understand. And sometimes the reason why no one's doing something is because they've tried and it doesn't work. So some of those things I still have to try. But I don't know what that is yet. If you find it, let me know. And if anyone listening finds it, let me know.
You think your marketing efforts will suss that out?
I think so. Yeah. We've already got some interesting ones. Like we had a recent, a couple weeks ago, was a funeral home owner operator, generational in the family, and they had like 4 funeral homes. You know
what's interesting about a funeral home? A, it's an active business that you can acquire. B, they always have parking. Right. C, they're always on a very large lot.
Yeah.
Right. Typically a corner lot.
Yeah.
Lots of exposure.
Good exposure.
Main road.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Exactly.
Just throwing that out there.
So that one was really tempting, except I can't remember the exact location, but it was like 2.5 hours north. It was almost like no more than that. It was almost North Bay. So for me, it was probably like 3.5 hours north. It was a little uncomfortable location wise. We don't know anyone. It's tough. But if that was like in my backyard, that would have been interesting. Can we find a better use of that? And I'll share my strategy maybe off air, what I'm thinking. Okay. So no one thinks I'm crazily dumb, but that would fall into my strategy as well. The little nugget.
Sure.
Yeah.
Man, this has been so much fun. So much fun. I think, just like I said a few minutes ago, I think you have a genuine passion for this, and you're clearly articulate. I would say highest and best use for you is some form of sales and rolling that into entrepreneurship, because you just have that vision, you just have that mind. So on this side of the mic, from me to you, thank you for being here. I really had fun today.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to learn from guys like you as well. So thank you for that.
Where can people find out more about you?
You can follow me on social media. Usually it's just at Darren Cabral on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. A new YouTube channel will be launching as well for personal, the real estate side, starting to track some of our deals and our work there. So yeah, just search Darren Cabral. You'll find me.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to sign up to the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.